Hello there. If you're new here, in my previous videos I was talking about my interpretation of Nikola Tesla's 369 energy, frequency, and vibration quotes. So if you haven't seen, please take a look at my other videos for a better understanding. If you're returning, thanks for being here. In my next videos, I wanted to talk about a reference I made to Marco Rodin and Vortex math and how it played heavy within my interpretation of this circuit. And there'll be many out there that have already done work into research into Marco Rodin's work and consider it to be pseudoscience, but science itself was considered magic until we explained it. So based on the fact that I believe this to be a simulation, to me, the information that's found, that Marco Rodin found, would seem to be some sort of code. The repetitive pattern that takes place seems to resemble the way nature itself seems to be. And so the last few years I've been spending my time trying to develop this circuit. And through lots of lost time and money and sanity, this is what I believe was meant by that circuit. So now I'm going to try to explain how this all sort of lays out. And because it's simply numbers, we're just laying out the points on two different pyramids. And these pyramids are basically just directing electricity around a circuit. And so in the videos, Marco describes 3 and 6 as oscillation points. And so the oscillation points would be where in my previous videos I described a switching, and so that's that oscillation. And so this would be our 3 position, and this would be our 6 position. And basically the first pyramid has points 3 and 1, 2, and 4, and the following pyramid has points 6 and 5, 7, and 8. And so what we're trying to do is to move the electrons through this circuit. And so what happens is we move the electrons from the switching points that happen, but they go through a physical manifestation realm. And Marco Rodin sees that as a pattern, as a 1, 2, 4, and a 5, 7, 8 pattern. And this pattern is a constant pattern, shows as he says, a divinity to math and some sort of efficiency that happens with numbers. And in one of my previous videos, I explained about the idea of Y and delta connections and how they perform in an AC motor. And these connections theoretically would take place at the 3 and 6 position. And so when this circuit is operating and when electrons are moving through here, what I believe happens is that on a 3-phase power, we have individual 3 circuits or 3 racetracks that take place, and each of this top point represents points 1, 2, and 4, and the bottom, the points represent 5, 7, and 8. And as it travels through from points 1 and it moves over to the end of that circuit, it meets in line with point 8 from the following circuit. And it moves around down to the bottom. And so 1 and 8 and 8 and 1 become paired. And as the circuit moves around, the following track or the following circuit ends up being points 2, follows through, and jumps over to point 7. And it follows back to point 7. And the following phase of power ends up being phase 4, and it follows through, and it jumps over, and end up meeting onto phase 5. And so this is how the numbers end up showing up as pairs. And so if you've ever done math, you always must have noticed that there's been a pairing with numbers, a 4 and 5, a 2 and 7, a 1 and 8, but it extends past that. And so what we end up having with this circuit is we get 3 9s, because 1 plus 8 is 9, 2 plus 7 is 9, and 4 plus 5 is 9. And so 9 is everything in Marco Rodin's work because that is where the arc happens. And so as I've described, as this circuit would spin through means that I haven't described yet, but as it spins the 9 point, which is the ring itself, which is that yin-yang circuit, as it passes through and around, and the electrons are simply moving, and we're just simply separating the masculine from the feminine. And when they join up on this spark, on this electronic discharge, that's where that point becomes 9 again. And we try to induce a current here, and that would be a spark, and that would be a static electricity. And essentially all we're doing is creating static within this crystal capacitor set. So as I said in one of my previous videos when we talked about the Y and delta connections that take place at the 3 and 6 positions, these are connections that affect a motor's ability to convert energy, and so we either have each of these circuits being individual, or each of these racetracks being individual, or the idea that they all intertwined and it becomes a massive racetrack for a much longer course. And electricity and electric theory does that is supported, that when based on how these connections are made will dictate how the power itself acts. And so within my videos, again, we described if each of the individual circuits represented individual circuits, they represent as 9. So we end up getting 3 9s out of individual circuit. But in Marco Rodin's work, there's a repeating pattern that takes place, and it becomes a pattern of 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. And that's the pattern that has me interested, because in that second video I theorized of great interest as to what would happen on this oscillation, and that there might be something grand that might take place, because that's where the energy can't really decide as to what the connection itself should be. And so with Tesla's 3-6-9 theory, what I've come up with is his 3, 6 are those oscillation points, and 9 being everything. And that's, as I described before, that discharge point where we'd have it separated. But in addition, each of these capacitors, and I've described them in more detail on other videos, so please take a look, but each of these capacitors are made in sets of 3. And so what we end up having is we have 3, and the following set ends up being 6. And again, at that 9 point is where we would have our discharge. And so we end up getting a repeating pattern of 1, 1, 9, and then the opposite circuit ends up being 1, 1, 9, or it depends upon the perspective, ends up being 1, 1, 6. And because this is all about a masculine and feminine, or a positive and negative circuit, everything is simply a matter of perspective. And so I realize a lot of this information may be technical, and I've spent a few years researching. So now, before I close, I wanted to thank a lot of those people that do the research. All the information that I found is thanks to them. And there's not many of you, and you're not rewarded for the work that you do. Considering the amount of people that post on YouTube and put videos out, most of the information that I see is in my opinion, garbage, and does nothing for people, and is probably a reason why our world is in the shape that it's in. But to you people that actually do work, this is why I'm putting it out there. I feel that a lot of you helped me on this, and I want to put this out there in case it is something. So now that being said, if you can like, share, and subscribe, but as I close all my videos with, please ask Elon.